Dead by Daylight's
So I'll
Year
go
9
ahead
was
and...
one of its best and worst years to date, with some of the biggest content drops and features, but also some of
There
the
we go.
worst bugs and mishandlings of both community and core game features.
Wait, were you joking, Bizarly? Oh, okay.
Today, I wanted to take the time to revisit it all, to document and share with you the highs and the lows, and look into what went right and what could have been approached better.
Ah.
Going into the year, the game was already in a very mixed state. We'd just come out the other side of the Tokyo Ghoul chapter, and Kaneki on release was one of the most
There we
OP,
go.
unfun killers to play against in the entire game. It was assumed that the people
Still kind of is for most
that he was
people.
going to be another Legion, since his power couldn't down. But this killer's short cooldowns and ability to hold just made him a horrible experience to go against, and this would continue very far into the year. We'd also just seen
Appreciate that.
further removal of skill expression with Oni's.
So once again, little tidbit about Kaneki. They did do like a pass on him, and he's a lot more bearable now, especially with the especially like I don't believe he mentions the like the snapping nerf. Um, that that really did help the enjoyment of him, because it actually does kind of feel like you can counterplay him now, as opposed to like him just locking onto you, hitting you behind like 2 or 3 walls with his thing, and you getting injured because he said so. So
Absolute gutting back to back into his full rework the next patch. As a long-time Oni main, I asked Jugglet his opinion on the changes, and he said when they announced the cap it was essentially a 90-degree turn, turning Oni into one of the most boring walk-down killers in DBD. He also said that from an overall business standpoint and inclusivity, the reversion and uncapping of the turn rate is great. However, he also hopes it isn't a glimpse of things to come, because it is for sure a removal of skill expression.
I do think that what's it called? The flicks for Oni, like that kind of just is, I would say, unfortunately something you have to have with him. Otherwise, if you run past him, he can't do anything about it. So that's a little awkward. It's like super old nurse where like she couldn't short her blanks, would just end up going a mile away from you if you ran in front of her. So you do kind of need that for Oni. Um, Also, the another thing he doesn't talk about is, I believe, within this same year time frame, I think was the patch where Oni got more blood for hooking someone, which I like. It's such a small change, but I do think it was one of the best ones that they've made for Oni, which is a little bit
DBD
goofy.
also
But...
got further Fortnite-ification. The visuals were completely changed, rarities were reworked in colour, and this was received with very mixed reception.
So on Ghoul
yeah, I do. The rarity thing is a little weird to me still, but I'm gonna be honest, I kind of hated the yellow color. Something really
release, which
stupid.
was in April of 2025, the Doctor's visuals had changed. And in the patch notes, they mentioned that there would be a change if you miss a skill check when snapping out of it, but his visuals have changed completely overall on the Survivor and the Killer end. So the static is very different. But unfortunately, at this point in time, I have to DC on site against Doctor, and it's been over a year, and that's really sad. And I also can't play as him anymore. 2 weeks after Ghoul release, they did release a patch attempting to fix it, but it didn't fix it. It reduced the static a little bit, but what causes the migraine and issues for myself and others is still there. They publicly said on a Reddit post that there are no planned changes in the future.
However,
That I think is complete bullshit. They should like absolutely change that immediately. If they're willing to change the ability of flashlight clicking because it was potentially causing seizures, they should be able to fix that if it's such an aggressive issue. So that's all on that. Like that should be no contest. Like that should be instant.
finally coming out the other side of the controversial UE5 update, which fundamentally broke the game in so many ways and caused the game to be plagued with bugs for months. And of course, as we'd known from a year prior, the first chapter of the new Dead by Daylight year was going to be Five Nights at Freddy's, a staple of modern horror and what would be Dead by Daylight's biggest chapter to date. Going into Canard, the PTB alone was genuinely huge. It did have some glaring issues, notably the facial animations on Singaingas were completely destroyed. Pulling Singaingas out
I
of
do
security
remember
office
that.
forced
It
them
was
into
funny.
default cosmetics, and notably there were
Got
serious
some great
audio issues
screenshots.
throughout the match in various places. Around this time there was also the announcement of the stats tracker, which was widely anticipated because it meant that there was no more need for third-party
The
sites,
stat
and it
tracker
was
is kind of
also
stupid.
accessible for console players. So there was a lot of excitement and a lot of hype around this feature. It was reported around the time that Scott was massively involved with the creation of the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter and its cosmetics, so community frustrations around there being no Singainga or the map being on an existing realm were almost indisputable because all of the chapter's design was down to the visual.
No Survivor, I agree with. Like, I've always been, like, the one thing that I've always been of the opinion on is that chapters should be one killer, one survivor, not necessarily a new map. Preferably a new map, but like being on an existing realm and having it be like this one in particular was a little bit weird. I do think that it would have been better as its own thing. Another thing is, like, I don't know that much about Five Nights at Freddy's, but like, I do think having, like from the games that I've seen gameplay of, I think having the person like manning the cameras would have been kind of cool to have as a survivor. I'm fairly certain they have a name, even though I don't know what it is. But the other thing is, I've heard weird stuff about like Freddy having the fire axe. I've heard that that's also kind of strange. So I don't know. I kind of wish that they would have fleshed him out a little bit more. But maybe have like, the doors that he could go through around the map and like maybe some other thing besides the fire axe. The fire axe just does not make sense to me. Because like, from what I've seen on the gameplay, he revolves more around like popping out of things and, getting you from that than marching at your ass and throwing a axe at you. So yeah, I've never understood that.
The original license holder, this wasn't on behavior. The map actually became a point of complaint later down the line, but at the time, the map being on Green Hill was pretty well received by the community, as the previous map on this realm was Green Hill Square, which came with the Unknown and Sable, and is arguably the most well-praised original chapter on all time.
Do love Green
This
Hill
update
Square.
also brought out a massively requested feature, the Go Next prevention methods, which on paper everyone yearned for, but
bulk
on
blood
release,
point spending was also really nice.
Reception,
that was
also brought
where
out
is
a
it?
massively
That was on this, the quality of life. Yeah, the top one on quality of life, bulk blood point spending, like that. I think people tend to forget how much of a fucking lifesaver that is. Because I'm sure everyone here remembers me constantly sitting at blood point cap because I never wanted to spend blood points, but. Yeah, that was also genuinely, I think people have forgotten like how much of a lifesaver that is.
Requested feature, the Go Next prevention methods, which on paper everyone yearned for, but on release it was actually met with a lot of mixed reception, because on one hand it removed the ability to Kirby while all Singaingas were alive, but it was also tethered to a very harsh timer, which didn't account for cheaters, and even worse, it didn't account for extreme levels of tunneling, so people would find themselves tunneled out of matches, and they themselves were penalised, because the game assumed they were trying to go next. The update released on June 17th, and the player count immediately reached its all-time peak of 106,000, which later would go on to be broken again at 120,000 concurrent players on Steam alone. With all these players on the live release, the game looked set for its best year yet. It wasn't without its bugs, as we all know and expect from DBD at this point, the most notable of which was the loss of audio when interacting with Springtrap stalls at all, causing the rest of the game to just be sounding completely off. However, with the game reaching its highest play count ever,
the game still sounds off, like the audio still doesn't work half the time.
And teasers realising that the next chapter would be The Walking Dead, this was set to be Dead by Daylight's biggest and best year for players, creators, and everybody involved with the development of the game. It really wasn't very long before the 9.1 PTB. In fact, the Masquerade event wasn't even over yet because the event had to be extended due to a 5-day outage on Xbox. The community weren't too happy with this event or the direction it took, being the 4th year in a row that the Masquerade was the anniversary event. But gameplay mechanics were improved, the modifier mode was made use of so it wasn't forced into regular trials, and it was...
Wonder when the video will get off the rails? Honestly, I've already watched this video once all the way through, so I know, you know, what's coming up. If you want me to be completely honest, I don't remember anything being, like, too not valid of complaints. Like, genuinely, it's all pretty valid. Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of, like, the Masquerade events. I think the Masquerade events just got too repetitive. Because, like, if you do an event, like, once a year, you know, like, obviously they have, like, their Halloween event, they have their winter event, and they have their, like, anniversary event. Like, if you do the same, like, the exact same winter event, like, 3 years in a row, with, like, it's like, oh, it's not the exact same, you can make yourself into a snowman. No, that's the exact same. Like, you added something insanely tiny. Like... yeah, no, but so that's what I hate. Like, if you're going to keep the, like, on, or the whatever invitations, I almost said envelopes, but that's Chinese New Year. If you're going to keep the invitations, like, make them do something different every year. You know, like, you can absolutely figure out different random things for them to do, you know, without it being, like, too oppressive. Like, I'm not asking to down a survivor with envelopes, even though or invitations, even though you could do that one year. You could use the invitations to expose someone after you get bloodlust, which, like, every killer did. But like, you don't have to, like, take, like, massive gambles, you know, like, you could do, like, I don't know, even, what's it called, even, like, blood point things, right? Like, you could make it so that you could throw an invitation on a generator and, like, hit a special skill check, and then you get, like, you know, 2,000 blood points. You could do that, and I'm sure the community would be thrilled with it. I would be. Like, I would do that kind of shit. Or, like, you know, you could do it in reverse on killer and make it so that if you throw it on the generator, if they miss, like, you know, an overcharged skill check or something, then you get blood points. There's plenty of stuff you could do with those invitations. You could literally do anything with them. And instead you decide to do the same thing. So that's
was promised
where
a
I
new
hate
event
these
will be
types of
coming in
events.
2026 for the year 10 anniversary. So with that in mind,
So I'm excited
in the middle
about
of the
that.
event, the 9.1 PTB dropped, and it was exceptionally poorly received.
Yes,
Rick
this
Grimes
was
dropped with a low quality model that didn't look
garbage.
much like the actor, and he had
His
some of
beard
the
looks
worst
penciled in.
on-hook screams to date, since the voice lines were his original actor, but the hook screams weren't. He also dropped with 3 almost useless perks, one allowing you to rebuild a pallet
I
after
believe they
rummaging
still
2
are
chests,
useless.
and this took 8 seconds on the PTB. An incredibly weak anti-tunnel perk, which just hasn't seen use at all since its
Yeah,
release,
no,
and our
Come
first
Get Me is
teamwork perk
okay.
since the Lyras, which also just was incredibly lackluster.
Yeah,
Michonne
Tough
was
Enough's
well
not
received,
amazing.
or at least maybe she would have been, but the character wasn't even playable on the PTB. So, with their perks
Yeah, that
in
was
the
stupid.
general perk pool, whoever we want to try out, we discovered 2 of Dead by Daylight's strongest and most overtuned perks to date. Last Stand spent 60 seconds in the killer's terror radius. After the perk activates,
Yeah, this was
vault
bugged for a
windows
long
with a new
time,
unique
too.
animation. If you vault into a killer within 2.5 meters, it stuns them for 3 seconds. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, stun, pretty big impact, but the animation was the biggest problem with this perk. You could parry Deathslinger's shot with this perk. The animation was imbalanced, the in time to the vault was decreased, and it essentially gave Suhainga's base kit finesse on every vault. You actually wanted to play this perk, not to stun the killer, but to instead just hang past the vaults the entire game. Conviction. After completing the healing action, whenever you're in a dying state, you can use Conviction, a 25% recovery progress, and it allows you to get up from the floor for 30 seconds before automatically going back down
Yeah,
again. Once again, it doesn't
Conviction's-
sound too insane.
Conviction's
but
still
both in
really
the
strong.
PTB and subsequently online release, this perk also included cell heals, and that also includes plot twist, so you could get up from conviction, and it activated conviction. This wouldn't be a massive issue, but there was no killer in this chapter, so the only other drawing point was the map, which once again was on Withered Isle, back to back with Five Nights at Freddy's.
I'm trying to remember if like when he's talking about perks, I can't remember, but I think this wasn't this the patch that they was it year 8 or year 9 that they removed what's it called? I want to say For the People Buckle Up, but I'm pretty sure that was removed in year 8. So I'm just trying to remember. I'm pretty sure there were other perks that were like really problematic during this time. I know Fast Track was, which he gets
Fight
to
was
later.
horrible. The only Walking Dead reference on the map was a hospital tile in the middle, and a huge
Yeah, this was stupid. This entire map could have been like the prison. Like, I'm pretty sure the prison's like super iconic in Walking Dead. And, you know, I barely know it. Like, if they would have shown the, like, you know, the prison, like, I'm pretty sure that's from first season. Like, they could have literally done just so many things with it. But yeah, instead we got this
miscommunication led to people not even
crazy
understanding
tile.
how this map worked. Because a dev on Reddit replied to a post miscommunicating that there was no map, but rather a tile that only spawned in when there was a survivor in the lobby playing as Rick or Michonne. But that wasn't all with this PTB. A major clan rework was promised, and a new survivor item into the general item pool was also promised. What was the state of those?
I
The
miss
clan
old Fog
rework led to him
Vials
being borderline
still,
brain dead,
but-
killing his pink bottle playstyle almost entirely, and turned him into a haste spam killer. Haste still stacked back then, using pink bottles was nearly useless, and I myself on release held the world record for the Clown 4K. As somebody who's never played the killer. The Fog Vial itself was also very poorly received. Fog crystals were already disliked, and this item was arguably worse. On release, it came out with some of DBD's worst accessibility issues to date.
For myself personally, the audio that came on the PTB with the Fog Vials was so bad. I was playing the PTB as Survivor, and I had multiple teammates using the Fog Vial on top of me until the point I DC'd from my match and had to sign off because I was genuinely getting a migraine. If you aren't familiar with migraines, they're like headaches times 100. They affect you very physically. I get migraines with aura. I start to see spots, my vision gets all distorted, I get nauseous, I throw up, I have very bad light sensitivity, and these can last days. So they actually adjusted the audio before it went live, which I really appreciate. I genuinely didn't think any changes were going to be made. I wish we could change the color of blinds. I know quite a few players who are photosensitive, and they can't play killer without Lightborn because of how the blinds affect them.
I'm
There
not
are
that bad,
phobias in
but
this
I
game that
don't
make
like
it
it.
difficult to face certain players. Players have trouble facing Plague because of emetophobia. I'm probably butchering that. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best.
Yep.
And I think something that could help with Plague and other characters in general, so like Doctor, is if you could turn
One thing, I've actually messaged the devs about Plague. That is the one killer that I have such a problem with that I've messaged the devs over. Because I can play maybe a Plague match, and if I get a second one, I definitively have to disconnect. And even the first one, I have to technically play like air quotes incorrectly because like I cannot stay injured on it. Otherwise, like I start feeling very nauseous. And you know, I've brought that up on stream before. Like it's, yeah, it is like, what's the word? That is like the one accessibility thing in this game that I really have. There actually I have a second one which they'll talk about in just a second. But yeah, that just because they brought that up, I have messaged the devs about that very thing. And yeah, they're gonna get a little more
off
into
the
it.
visual effects when
Like
facing
that?
killers.
That'd be great.
Okay, this is like a controversial one. I don't know why it is, but whenever I bring it up, people get upset. If you had an option to turn off screams, I would absolutely love that. I'm someone who,
I would
when I play on my
100% as
PC,
well.
I turn on mute focus and I
Yep.
alt tab whenever my survivor gets hooked, so I don't hear my survivor screaming.
Yep.
After playing this game for like almost 9,000 hours, the screams really get grating sometimes. Essentially, any accessibility issue that I'm bringing up, I'd say should
10,200
be a
hours, they are
toggle or an
grating. Yep.
optional change. I don't want it to be like implemented across the board in case other players wouldn't like that. I love this game and I just want to be able to play it and have as many people be able to play it without getting sick.
The PTB also featured multiple perk reworks, which were all generally disliked. Notably, Franklin's Demise lost its ability to regress items on the floor, and because of new...
Behold, one of my least favorite perk changes they made during this fucking patch. I loved Franklin's as an option to deal with items, and now I don't think it does at all. Because one thing that is super problematic is people bringing in toolboxes with, like, brand new parts, and people bringing in keys. There is now nothing to deal with either. Before, Franklin's could reduce the charges on a toolbox to 0, so they couldn't use a brand new part. So that was counterplay to it. Now it knocks it out of their hand, they can go back and pick it up, and it still has full charges, and they can still brand new part it. So there is now officially no counterplay to brand new parts. You can argue whatever you want, but the fact remains that if you can hit a skill check, there is no counterplay to brand new parts. And it's like, oh, then make a difficult skill check, but still, if you can hit it, my point is, like, brand new parts are a very strong item, and, you know, like flashlights, you know, there's, what's it called? There is, Lightborn, obviously, which, you know, having, like, 4 flashlights is absolutely, like, abysmal to deal with on Killer, unless you bring Lightborn. Or, you know, kind of used to be Franklin's, but, you know, now you can't. The other thing was items being knocked out of people's hands in the percentage bar draining also played into people wanting to go back for their item faster. Now, like, if you just make a mental bookmark of where it is, which my memory is terrible, so that's a little difficult for me, but for the average person, it's usually not such a big deal. Yeah, you just mentally bookmark where it is, and it's like, yeah, I'll just leave it there. And, like, you know, if you're in, like, a 4-stack especially, you don't have to worry about it. Because if it's something important, like, you don't have to worry about someone stealing it. And if it's something like, let's say, a key, right? You can just leave it there and then, like, pick it up at the end of the game when you need hatch. So, I really hate that Franklin's change. So, yeah, because now there's no change to keys, and it gives way to one of the most boring playstyles ever, which is sitting in the corner of the map and waiting for hatch. And burning hatch at Shack. Like, I saw someone with a key earlier today and didn't want to play against it because, like, every time I see a key, that's what I think is going to happen, is someone crouching in a corner and just, you know, running whatever perk to not get found, and then just use the key at Shack. So, and now there's no way to deal with it. Before, I would equip Franklin, slap it out of their hand, and then, like, you know, I'd probably do, like, Franklin's Weave Attunement, and then just, now you have a tiny dot on the map that, like, you know, people have to annoyingly pick up, like, if they want their key back. And then also, if they leave it on the ground, like, it also gives you, like, aura now, which, you know, there's nothing stopping you from doing that now, but, like, you know, it still becomes a little bit like, it still gives you a chance to counter it. Because there are ways to outplay those, but at least it gave you a chance to outplay it. Because, like, before, if someone ran back and picked up their item and then, like, you know, didn't want to deal with Franklin's, you can drop it again, and then it doesn't drain the percentage. Hey, Starcrush. Starcrush, we're actually doing something a little bit different today. This is actually a video that I am reacting to, specifically because the person encouraged you to send it to creators to react to it. They wanted people to react to it, and this is someone that I am genuinely, like, quite a big fan of their content. So, but we'll go ahead and give you a proper shout out right now because the video is paused. So basically, gonna hop off the game, not feeling 100%. Well, Obs, you know, you have a good night. I hope you feel better. Please feel free to, you know, stay in chat if you so choose. Otherwise, if you want to, you know, otherwise, I wish you, you know, I guess a good night and have a good nap or whatever. Okay, that's good to hear. But yeah, to those that don't know Star Crushed, another incredible creator, plays Killer and Survivor, has some of the longest and most entertaining streams I've seen. Please go give him a look. But let's go ahead and get back to the video.
Keys and maps use a number values rather than charges. Streetwise and overwhelming presence.
Briefly, yeah, those are also absolutely garbage changes. Maps and keys, both of those are garbage
Had to be
changes.
reworked. And as part of Streetwise's rework, it added charges to an item pulled from a chest. Infinitely. You could just put items in and out of the chest, and they would gain charges exponentially. It added 80% on the current charge count every single chest pull. The PTB came with all these glaring issues, and on the release, nothing changed at all. We finally got to play with Michonne, whose model was incredibly made but didn't feature an original voice actor. Not long after the release, Streetwise and Last Stand were kill switched, but all the damage had already been done. Last Stand's bugs became prevalent, and Streetwise was dismissed by behaviour for kill switch, and it was only after community outcry at the infinite item bug, which was deemed not
if you
only
guys
not
weren't
kill
around for this,
switch
this
worthy,
was
but not
goofy
ban
as
worthy, that the devs had to release a
everything.
post re-clarifying what was worthy of a kill switch after the community rioted until the perk was taken out of the perk pool. An update less than a week later had to address multiple critical bugs. Chasers had errors leading to them not being able to start. There was a bug with the right-hand side of staircases,
remember
making
this.
players move more slowly. Fog Rose were also nerfed almost immediately after their release. The Rift was also very badly received. The came
So Fog Vials, the Fog Vial nerf, I still hate to this day. I thought that it was really cool that that they were a item that had a charge time instead of a number of times you could use it. Yeah, it was terrible. it was a rift that I questioned on whether or not I wanted it for free, because like I didn't want to grind it because it was bad. But yeah, the Fog Vials, what's it called? Like, I thought that it was really unique that it had like a charge, like, you know, a time period that you couldn't use it, rather than a number of rather than like a number that you could, if that makes sense. So like how keys have like a number that you can use it, but it doesn't have a cooldown. Like, I thought that it was its own unique thing, and I kind of really liked that. You know, if they would have nerfed it another way, I think I would have preferred it, but yeah, like, I don't know, maybe like make it take longer between uses or something, start at like 30 seconds, and then like each consecutive one adds like 15 or something. So then, like, you know, what, like, if you spam it, then like, you know, towards the end of the game, it would be like, I don't know, like 5 minutes between charges, but if you conserve it, then like, you know, you still have like a 30-second charge and like a 45-second charge. And yeah, you could have done something like that. And then the rework for Streetwise could have also been like, I don't know, like, it could have been something more interesting than what it is. But maybe like, I want to say like items regenerate over time, but that would be far too powerful. That would give way to a whole new level of awful. So I don't want to say that, but you know, like, although the Streetwise change is actually fairly interesting, chests still are like not the best thing to do, so it still kind of is like an eye raiser when I see it. Like, if they would buff like Plunderer's Instinct, like, that would be amazing. Like, if you're running a perk specifically to look into chests for like better stuff, make it just open chests instantly. I don't think that that's aggressively powerful. Like, you know, it's, to me it's goofy. Like, if I see someone that, you know, that brings a perk that can open chests instantly, I wouldn't even be mad. It means that I lose time on killer, sure, but like, you know, a fourth of their build is dedicated to instantly opening chests. Wow. Godspeed. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
with this update. Multiple characters who'd featured multiple times in the past were featured once again as main characters, getting 3 Deep Rift recolors. Elodie, who was the central survivor of the Rift, didn't have a lore expansion and didn't receive a badge until much later down the line. The skins as a whole were very poor, and this Rift was not well received at all. With frustrations rising, and presumably the chapter not even selling all too well, on August 7th, a stream was announced for the 11th, featuring...
If you guys haven't seen this, this was one of the biggest train wrecks in DVD history. And that is a high bar. That is a high bar. I'm just giving people a warning.
Walking Dead actor Chandler Riggs alongside 4 official DVD creators. And if you weren't around for that time, boy did you miss out, because this was Dead by Daylight's pinnacle of error and failure to listen to their own community.
So many hours you can sink in and never be done with it.
I think it's happening again.
Yeah, guys, I'm so sorry, but I'm just gonna be a bit blunt with behavior and just let them know that.
I would say this was one of them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was the pinnacle.
After an hour of attempted play,
I'm gonna say this real quick. The pinnacle of DBD fuck-ups, I think, was the dev stream where they were saying that survivors are horribly unbalanced, and they legitimately told like their audience to go play something else. I think that is the pinnacle of fuck-ups. Like, that is... Yeah, play Civilization, exactly. I think that was the pinnacle of fuck-ups. Because, like, you have an audience that genuinely cares about the game going, like, you know, pretty much unanimously, like, yeah, Survivor's a little bit too powerful. Would you guys mind, like, toning it down just a little bit? Play something else. Like, okay, man, damn. So, yeah, I think that was the pinnacle of fuck-ups. This was up there, though. Don't get me wrong.
Someone was repeatedly attacked by DDoSers who were finding their way into the lobby with the expanded spectator slots and lagging out the entire game. A bug that had been known about for a very long time and had a very easy prevention method. Fill out the spectator slots.
I would just rather get some of our mods or some of our trusted folks to be here if possible. Like, even if it's just for the first game until we have staff. Otherwise, we're going to hold poor Chandler here until we can play.
Which is what was attempted by Otstarner, but the behaviour dev team shut him down. And after the creator sitting, trying to make conversation with the actor, it was ultimately called a day.
This is not a live stream, but we've recorded this for you rather than throwing another big wall of text at you. We thought that would be better to see us face to face, and instead of spend our time apologizing, actually spend our time talking about some actions we're going to take to make things better in the world of DBD.
3 days after the event, an announcement was made with an apology and a 7-minute long video featuring 2 developers announcing a 3-phase planned approach because of how unhappy the community had become. The plan was simple. The PTB for the upcoming chapter was going to be delayed to September so that they could address the immediate issues,
also train
including
wrecks,
the last
all of
stand
this.
perks re-enabling and continuation to be bugged, and simple, silly quality of life bugs as small as this beam appearing on the occurrence screen, which was an absolute atrocity. How can something as simple as this make it past test servers and onto the live game? And why, as a dev team, would you look at that and turn it into a joke? This is the pinnacle of incompetence in the behaviour office. Further frustration was caused after they even took the time to turn this bug into a meme badge before Elodie even got one out in her own Rift. The November chapter was delayed by 2 months to focus on high priority and impactful killer issues, do a full rework on the shape, and also address slugging, tunneling and camping issues in matches. And as we were about to see on the PTB, they already had a solution in mind. In mid-September, we finally saw the delayed PTB for Dead by Daylight's next original chapter, Sinister Grace. And this PTB wasn't only to focus on the new content, it was also to bring out the first iteration of slugging and tunneling prevention methods. The PTB introduced base kit Tenacity, where survivors could crawl and recover at the same time, and the slug survivor had an anti-camp bar, which after 90 seconds granted a one-time unbreakable. Anti-tunnel prevention methods were also up to 30 seconds of base, granted the current BT effect, and the first iteration of the elusive status effect, which granted immunity.
This was
to killer
also a train
instinct
wreck of a
and removed
PTB.
all
Like,
collision from the survivor.
this, I mean, as far as anti-slugging changes go, like, it can be a little bit weird because, like, slugging is, a strategy. And I do believe this. Like, I think that slugging is a very strong strategy. So if you take it away, I do believe that you have to give Killer something else. Because, like, they've been taking stuff away from Killer a good bit. Granted, for the health of the game, like, I don't believe that there's anything I've been upset about that they took out that, like, I think was too unhealthy. Like, for example, like, anti-camp. I think anti-camp is extremely healthy for the game. And I agree that, like, endgame collapse, it shouldn't work because, like, what the hell else are you going to do? The person on hook is your new objective. Like, I agree with all of that. But as far as slugging goes, I think that, like, I think for everything you take out, you have to incentivize Killer with something else. That is a big, big thing for me. Because, like, if you're looking at it from Survivor side, yeah, being slugged is one of the most boring, like one of the most boring things that you could possibly have happen to you. It takes away a lot of agency from the game. It, like, you're basically forced to just sit there without really any recourse of being able to do anything, unless, like, you're running tenacity or obviously you have some way of picking yourself up. So yeah, I do think that slugging is its own beast, but once again, I think that if you take slugging out, you have to put something back in, because, like, slugging can absolutely be used as, like, a massive strategy for Killer, and is sometimes necessary to do in order to slow the game down, because there's so many, like, speed up perks that exist, and it, sometimes it's necessary to leave someone on the floor and go back to a generator that's like 50% because it can get completed too quickly. So that's kind of where I am. What's it called? The anti-stacking changes help that a little bit. But the problem still exists with, like, hyper-focused stakeout. Like, the stacking changes do nothing to account for that. And then on top of that, you can also run, like, whatever other, speed up perk you want, because you still technically haven't touched gen speed yet. You've touched percentages, which I don't believe are nerfed in that. So, that's its own separate headache. Because the biggest gen rush combination is is that. So that is an incredibly roundabout way of, like, giving my opinion on the slugging changes, is that I approve of them attempting to take slugging out of the game. I do think it's a very boring thing to deal with. However, doing it is not simple. So these changes, while, I don't think they were terribly successful, I do appreciate them.
In exchange for this, Killer's gained Base Kit Barbecue, Base Kit Pop Goes the Weasel, and a varying level of haste depending on if the developers considered them to be a high movement killer. If a Survivor was killed before 6
I also appreciate them attempting to balance around
on the
that.
map would be blocked,
around
and
the high mobility
got a
thing.
permanent repair speed bonus. Killers also no longer knew whether a Survivor was still on the hook or not. The environment presented in the PTB was almost unanimously hated, and it presented a very poor testing grounds on a new killer, the Krasu, because after being tested on this PTB,
Krasu
was incredibly
absolute train wreck on release.
The devs misinterpreted her state as being severely underperforming, and before she was released, they buffed her to the high heavens, creating Dead by Daylight's new S-tier killer, able to rival the nurse.
In the whole game's probably history, I think she's the best killer to have a multi-hit mechanic in terms of strength.
You're putting that side by side with Nem.
So that's not clickbait, by the way. To those that did not play against on-release Krasu, like, everyone always says, like, oh, this killer is S tier, this killer is S tier, this killer is S tier. On-release Krasu might have actually been S tier. Like, I can almost, like, from my opinion, I would say she was. Because, like, it just felt impossible to deal with. So, yeah. That I just wanted to put that aside because, like, it's a very common thing for people to do. Like, is this killer S tier? Is this The answer is, for her, yes. I think that genuinely she is one of the only other killers in history to actually be S tier. Because, like, for me, that is a high bar to achieve. That is, I don't take calling something S tier lightly. So for me, I think that she was one of the only other S
severely
tiers.
punished by his vaccines. Trickster, you have to follow up 6 consecutive knowings of the time limit.
Her whole second power mainly tied to her leech, except for the flight, which is on its own, like, probably one of the most versatile tools in the game. It can be used to chase, it can be used across the map, it can be used to cut off survivors, and it kind of rewards really good macro. I'm not a big fan of mechanics, I'm more of a game knowledge sort of person. I think a lot of her nerfs were really justified, and they weren't too harsh to bring her down a lot. I think one of the biggest issues that made her feel not very good to play was the nerf that made her leech completely be removed on Hook. Having leeched off Hook is really stupid because it encourages the cross to the tunnel. I think it should have been a little less harsh. I think over time it should gradually decrease, and that continues when they are unhooked. If you have everyone on the floor and they're all leeched, then they really struggle to pick their teammates back up, because if they pick up near the Crossu, then she's just going to immediately re-down them and then down the other person, which makes it extremely hard for the survivor team to come back.
Yeah, I think people should definitely not have leech when they leave Hook. Like, that is no. Nope. Anything that incentivizes her to tunnel, that's gonna be a no from me, dog.
Because I remember when we did
it's also easy enough to
I
apply
had a
leech
long
if you want
conversation
it.
with saying she's one of the best sluggers in the game because she doesn't have that time limited power the Plague has.
I think if more people played Slugging Crossu, I think it's way more fun to play as her. Plus, you don't have to transform as much, which makes the killer feel way less clunky, because her transform time is way too long in my opinion. The main issue with a lot of people is that she feels really slow to play, and that makes her really unappealing for players to play as, because people don't like playing as clunky characters. I think the main way we could fix this is probably reducing her transform time from head into body, and it feels less of a commitment, and a lot of maps have a lot of issues with leeching glands.
As far as that, like, I think she's pretty fine right now. I mean, I'm not a Crossu player, so but, like, I do like some things to reduce clunkiness could be nice, but obviously it, like, the more you buff her, the more it gets into the territory of she's going to go back to that, like, scary place where she's an S tier killer, just, running over teams of survivors, because she already has very high mobility in that, like, that M1 she has in head form already has a very janky hitbox, and, like, that can already pull some, like, ridiculous stuff. So yeah, I as far as buffing her, like, any more than she is, I'm kind of raising an eyebrow at that, but, like, I don't know enough about her to say.
Being able to bounce off them. Some of the hills on certain maps aren't able to be bounced off of for regurgitate.
Collision is just bad.
I think this is probably because some of the hills use tiles on, like, the floor or the ceiling or something like that, so it makes the Crossu feel very inconsistent, and that can be really frustrating for
It's
players.
the same issue that the Blight had for a really long time.
I think the main thing I would do is take a jab at her slugging potential, because I feel like it is way too strong. And I feel like if she was more popular, it would be way much more of an issue.
The PTB also sold the long-awaited rework of Michael Myers, who'd been fallen behind due to his overall weakness, and he'd also gone relatively unchanged since his release in 2016, aside from a minor buff patch the previous year.
a lot of people will be like, you only like the new Myers because, you know, he's a lot easier to win with. Untrue. I liked him since the beginning when he was a lot crappier in that PTB.
Because
I always...
people were saying side grade, weren't they?
Yeah, what I really was drawn to was switching between the two modes. Slaughter Strike I had mixed feelings
I like
about.
that too. I like the
still
swapping as
kind of
well.
do. It is fun though. For the type of game Dead by Daylight is, Michael Myers came out at a time where the game was much more oriented towards like stealth and being spooky, yada yada. It's not that anymore. The add-on changes.
So, little fun thing about Michael, I actually thought when he very first came out that he was overpowered because he ignored Spine Chill. And Spine Chill says that it, like, you know, it ignores like stealth things. So when Michael Myers first came out, he ignored Spine Chill, so it wouldn't tell you when he was coming. So I just a little bit of a fun tidbit on that. But as far as the change goes for me, out of 10. I don't like the dash as much as I like his original M1, which is why I always play him with that add-on. But
initially, there was just no reason to use about 3/4 of Michael's add-ons.
They were just progressively better.
I do like
the
the
following
add-on
up on the
changes.
line, and then I'm pretty sure again, like further patches down the line, they buffed him more and more and more as time went on.
Yes.
Was that too much? Was that not enough? How do you feel about the subsequent buffs that came after the PTB?
There are people that complain online about the new Myers, but I've been going up against a fair
I don't
amount
think
of
he's oppressive.
survivors that are now getting really good at going up against the new Myers and actually like competently going up against him.
I think he's
so
like
I don't actually think he's
almost
crazy,
like better pig.
ridiculously strong. I think he's solid though. Like I'm trying to think of like anything that I would personally like want to change, but I think he's in a good spot. I had a match yesterday, and they were complaining in Endgame, being like, "Oh, he's just broken as nurse. He's just like, I hate this guy, just like the ghoul." But the other
anyone
three
who
were like,
says
"Yo, that was a
Michael's
great
is
game."
broken as nurse does not know what they're
You can
talking
kinda make
about,
that
or
argument
fights
for a
like the
lot of
worst
killers. There are
nurses
killers
on the
like
planet.
Freddy, which are known to be pretty average. Also, Noob Stompers, Dredge again.
You see the complaints online that, oh, he's nothing like Michael Myers in the movie. I would disagree. I think they actually get a lot right with the character. There are some things like, yeah, the Slaughtering Strike isn't quite really like what he does in the film. You know, adapting him into DBD and making that change so that like it's not the same game that it was before. It's not.
On release, because of how weak she was seen to be in the test environment, Krasu received bugs across the board, which led to her being borderline S tier, and notably added a hug tech to her Headhorn M1, and a bunch of other base stat bugs that led her to being in an extreme state. The release also saw none of the anti-tunnel and slug changes making it to live, and on the release as well, behavior after not
super
testing
poorly
this
received.
nerfed OTR into the ground, removing its endurance effect entirely, which was
So in the corner there is the change to OTR, just in case you guys want to read it. But yeah, like them changing it from a anti-tunnel perk was not great. I do what's it called? I do think that they can do some like interesting stuff with anti-tunnel perks, and I think they should be a little bit more experimental with them. But at the same time, I also do feel like Killer needs a little bit more regression in their corner, because like I don't believe it was patch 9. I think it was earlier than patch 9. I'm pretty sure it was even like as far back as maybe patch 7 or 8. I would need to look it up. But like back when they implemented like the 8 kick limit, like that was a big change for Killer. And like a lot of people are like, "Oh, what do you mean if you like kick a generator like 8 times whatever, like that should be enough." The problem is it counts instances where generators are like, you know, they're at like 1% or whatever, and then you hit it with what's it called? Like Jolt or something. So like once again, I always forget if it's Jolt or Surge, but just covering my bases on that. But yeah, like the thing is, you can it's the same thing. You can kind of like mess with perks like that by making them at one, like you can make generators at 1%, just run by them, like touch them for like fraction of a second. And then if like the killer has, you know, like has Jolt or Surge, it'll still count as a regression event. So by the time you actually get around to dealing with those generators, they have like, you know, like 3 or 4 kicks on them. So like that's pretty big. And then one perk that everybody absolutely loves but I can't stand is Eruption, because every time you kick a generator, when you down someone, that's another kick. Like you only get 8 of them. And it's like, well, yeah, you know, you don't want to like get 3-gen'd and like, you know, locked out or what. Like, the thing that I'm arguing against is that if it needs to be a regression event over 5%, like, it should be a gen regression event over 5%, and I don't think baseline kicking should count for it. Like, I think if you're taking the time to walk up to a generator and kick it, that should not count towards one of the 8. Like, if you're using, like, pain res, yeah, absolutely, fuck that. Like, that should absolutely count as one of the 8. If you're using, like, Jolt, sure, it does, like, 10% or whatever. But I think that if it doesn't go beyond, I forget what the threshold needs to be for it to count as a kick. Or, like, for it to count as a regression event. But, like, I don't think that things that are, like, under 5% should count as a regression event. So, you know, there's that. But I'm getting a little bit like ADHD off the rails there, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut that train of thought there.
With a lot of upset and backlash from the community, not because it was completely unnecessary, and it also resulted in the rise in the popularity of Decising Strike. It was also around this time frustrations began to rise with the map pool. After the release of the realm prevention system earlier in the year, it came with the unintended side effect of boosting the likelihood of going to one realm maps, since each realm now had an equal chance of occurring rather than each map. This meant maps such as Gideon, RPD, Midwich, they all occurred as frequently as any one of the Autohagen maps, for example. This wasn't even addressed, and it was only mitigated in April of 2026. The Rift that was supposed to be released alongside Sinister Grace also ended up being postponed and released on October 6th, and this was met with even more frustration than the previous Rift, because its duration was 110 days, the skins were poorly designed, and Claudette's headpiece didn't even feature in the Rift due to quality issues. Around this time, 2 Dead by Daylight's most new obstructing skins released: the Knight and the Lincoln Cat Oni skin, which was a bear, and the bear's
I remember people being really excited about this, and I have that skin now, so at least that skin's fixed now, but yeah. I remember this video with Oth reviewing the skin.
Unplayable on release, and once again, the devs had to release a statement addressing these issues. It wasn't until 9.2.2 finally released on October 2nd, and this saw nerfs to the Krasu and the recursion of OTR partially, and following this was the Haunted by Daylight event, which once again was the same event for the 3rd year running. This left the game in a truly horrendous state, but there was still a little bit of promise because behaviour delayed the November chapter to January. So November's mid-chapter release promised A, a fix to the tunneling and slugging issues.
I've already brought up what I think about repeat events.
Issues, or so we thought. After Behavior's promises to fix core issues and to justify the 2 months of delays added to all of its content, this patch was the health chapter we'd been promised back in August. Once again, tunneling changes were attempted to be made. This time an unhooked Tangaiga outside of endgame would receive 30 seconds of haste.
I remember this PTB because I made a build around dying as fast as possible intentionally.
Endurance, and the updated Elusive, which worked like a combination of Distortion and Iron Will's effects. In return, killers upon unique hooking would receive 15 seconds of Bloodlust 1 and a 10% stackable bonus for every unique hook at the end of the game. Once again, these changes were met with backlash because the casual killer had been all but killed off as far as the community was concerned all the way back in 6.1, where barbecue stacks and wiggling stacks were removed and hooking all forcing hikers was simply no longer incentivized.
I don't know
the anti-slug bar was also back, even though it had been disliked the first time, time, and the only change to it was now 120 seconds instead of 90. To top it all off, anti-camp got buffed in something like a Skyhanger, with the rate increasing the longer the killer stayed around the hook in an increased range. The one saving grace killers received here was that the OP Synchronic and Medkit add-ons were completely gutted, the syringe being side-graded to remove exhaustion rather than being an insta-heal, and the Styptic is now one of Dead by Daylight's worst item add-ons. November 25th saw the release of this mid-chapter, and once again,
the Styptic ones, it genuinely seemed like they just forgot about it, because it's still in that state now. It's still trash now. Like, and to those that don't know what Styptic does, it's like 15% like medkit efficiency, which if I remember correctly is less than a brown bandage. So it's not worth using. One thing that I've always wanted to see on a medkit that I haven't seen them do is something that ignores mangled and possibly can cure like hemorrhaging. So you could after like healing 20% with a med kit, like your hemorrhaging goes away, and it ignores mangled. I think that would be sick because like med kits are a temporary thing. So if someone's bringing that just in case the killer brings mangled, I don't think that that's too oppressive. A temporary thing in case the killer brings a mangled thing, which is common enough, but also not extraordinarily common. So that's what I think that it should be changed to, because I think that should be like purple quality, not quite iridescent. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
All the anti-slug changes were dropped. Almost all the anti-tunnel changes were removed, with the exception being the increasing of base kit BT to 15 seconds from 10, and the only notable feature we saw go through was the anti-camp changes, which, in fairness, were acceptable. Skull Merchant also saw her first changes in a year since her temporary gutting, as the Demps had put it, and none of these changes were impractical in the slightest. By this point, both hers and Trickster's complete reworks had been all but forgotten. By the demand of no one, Autohagen also saw a lighting change which the wider community just simply didn't like. And the icing on the cake of this chapter was that the content delayed from November to January had been Stranger Things. And for that release, the plan was to put the old outfits on the front page of the store, and they didn't reschedule it. So Behavior pretty much leaked their own chapter in the game store. December 1st saw the same Christmas event again for the 3rd year in a row, and a roadmap to the end of the year had been released showing only one cosmetic collection in the year's Christmas jumpers. And only 2 months on from his initial rework, there's an announcement made on DBD's socials stating that Michael Myers and Haddonfield and Laurie would all be removed from the game next month.
Seeing the removal, I have mixed feelings about it. So, I mean, if I could have it my way, I wish he never would have left. But I love DBD, but I'm a Halloween fan first. If it means throwing DBD Myers in a volcano for Halloween the game, in which, there's a full story mode that I can go through the whole experience of the first film as
You're
Michael
not
Myers.
just playing in the world of DVD, you're playing in the world of Halloween, which is
I get to be in Halloween. Like,
see.
what Halloween fan is gonna say no to that? In general, that's usually my thoughts.
So one thing about them losing licenses, if this is going to be a continual trend of them, continuing to lose licenses, I would have a backup plan for the killers specifically. Like, if people want to play, Michael Myers, have, have someone releasing called Man with Knife, and just have him do, roughly the same thing. Unless that's part of their image thing with Michael, that they can't have, people operating the same way gameplay-wise. I don't know how that works. But, I feel like you could very easily just do that and have a very generic looking person that does that. That way people that like how the killer plays can still do that, because people that were back when demo was taken out, I remember people sitting there going, oh man, I really like how demo works, and there's not really there's not really anything that operates quite like demo, and like back at the, I think this was before Dracula, and like they're just, even if it wasn't, like, I remember people saying that they were really interested in playing demo, and then it's just like, well, tough shit. There's nothing that does that besides demo that is now out of the game. So I do think that they should have like backups to licenses that they, that they have just in case they lose them. If it's going to be a continuing trend of them needing to juggle all these licenses and possibly losing them, possibly not. So that, yeah, I just wanted to toss that out
on
there.
Just about every character within DBD. Like if we got a full Nightmare on Elm Street video game, I would prefer Freddy Krueger in that game than I would in DBD. I'm a horror fan more so first than I am like a DBD fan.
Mm-hmm.
But of course there is like the legacy of Halloween. He was the first licensed character. Like Michael has been around for 9 years. Most people that have like wanted Michael are gonna already have him. Of course the map, losing that kind of stinks, but not only are you getting like a Myers house location, you're getting all of Haddonfield. As a Halloween fan, like I know Michael's gonna get a lot more love in the new game than he would have if
Not sponsored.
stayed in Dead by Daylight. No, I'm not sponsored. I'm just a fan, and I actually got to play the game. I really liked the game. Gameplay wise, if they want to bring him back, I
personally don't care about Halloween.
Down, and I want stealth to be brought back
but
into Dead by Daylight. The biggest thing I want
what's
is
it called?
Changes.
I can respect the fact
him
that
to look like Michael Myers.
I can respect the fact that another game centered around Halloween would show him more love, and I can absolutely respect the people that are fans of it. Because, yeah, no, Michael, for being one of the biggest IPs in this game, has not received the love he's deserved. I could absolutely agree on that, because, back when I started playing this game and Michael Myers came out, I didn't know anything about horror. I did not watch any pure horror movie ever, and I still knew who Michael Myers was. So...
Make him look more authentic and not.
Make him actually look like Michael Myers.
The one saving grace on December for DBD was the update to the creator program, adding a tier for smaller creators, and it was the first acceptances of new creators since the program's creation back in June.
Super happy about this.
This marked the end of 2029. Following the Christmas break and Dead by Daylight's most nothing burger patch, with zero noteworthy changes, the PTB for the delayed chapter was finally upon us, and it was revealed to be Stranger Things Chapter 2. And this was Dead by Daylight's first well-received update, arguably since Five Nights at Freddy's. The new killer was well designed, the skyline has looked amazing, the only notable quarrel in the community was that there was no new map, but as was the case with Resident Evil Chapter 2, the map from the original chapter had received an update prior to the release. The update dropped on January 22nd, and it was the first
at least
new
we got
with few bugs, the character's little issues from the PTB were ironed out, but it also came with the sad reality of Myers and Laurie being gone for the foreseeable future, and their perks were added to the general perk pool. There's not really much to complain about on this one. I actually think Behavior did a really good job, and so did the community.
So, side note on that, I don't believe he brings up that, what's it called, that they got rid of, Myers map, I'm blanking on it, Haddonfield. So I don't think too many people miss Haddonfield. So, there's that. The other thing is, like, we got one of the funniest jokes out of that, which I don't think he also, like, brings up, and that's the fact that they renamed DS to Will to Live. So you can officially say, I exhausted my will to live in game. And it still means, it means something actually coherent. So, a couple of bright sides there, right?
community. This was the first release in a long time with very few game-breaking bugs, a clear roadmap of cosmetics, and there was very little discourse
Funny
within the
joke in
community.
Haddonfield.
The new Rift after the 110-day Rift prior was also very well received, seeing licensed skins taken the front and centre, more community skins, and all the skins releasing in a functional state. The only other downside to 9.4 was the re-release once again in 2K8, and its further extension to the dismay of everybody. But, credit where credit's due, this period, start of the year, was genuinely fantastic for the game. However, as we all know, and we all expect from now, this wouldn't last.
Still wish they would add, like, every time 2v8 recycles, I still wish that they would add, like, a new killer back in. Also, I don't remember if they disabled Legion on that 2v8 or if it was just the most recent one. I think it was just the most recent one that they took him out back and put him in the forever box.
After its initial teasing around a couple of years prior, it was teased that the 9.9 chapter would finally be the rework of the Trickster in the format of All Kill Comeback. His 115
Rework feels
had
pretty
completely
generous.
missed the mark, and the character had been in a very sad state for a very long time. The promised Trickster map from his OG lobby was finally coming also, with the designer of the beloved Almond Lake mine returning as creative lead. The decks also promised that Yunjin would see her weak and underused perks reworked on the PTB. However, to the average player, the PTB was a huge disappointment. The new Survivor perks brought very little exciting or game-changing features to the table. The Trickster rework, while cool in concept, felt like a side grade, bringing him to a point not much stronger than he was originally.
Summarizing it very briefly, because what am I thinking? Because I'm on my side that 4.6 Trickster as a state, not as a movement speed, but I'm just talking about entire version as a whole, didn't work whatsoever, because the time to kill got ridiculously increased because you had A-Blaze to hit, you were constantly slowing yourself down to throw to use main event. Sure, you were getting the access to the main power, some people were saying, of main event more frequently, but in the end, time to kill was getting drastically increased. I knew that Trickster rework were happening, I knew how the rework is gonna be present, because I was the part of, like, I'm gonna call it consultant program when it comes to the Trickster. At first glance, I was very skeptical about 4.4 movement. Then after just a couple of games, I was like, nah, that's completely fine. You know, Trickster as a whole was always a character that you either like it or hate it, and majority of the people were hating on it. Afterwards, they fixed a lot of things, and now it is as it is, and I'm happy about it. Weirdest add-on design that you probably will never run on Trickster is meta in comp. Inferno Wires that is increasing the S-rank duration, so not main event, but the time that you can use your main event and apply permanent blades. You know what I mean? Like, blades do not decay in S-rank, so you can just pretty much camp, maneuver around the area, and if somebody is gonna sneak peek around the corner or something, you just throw in a couple of blades. Definitely, the character itself is in a very, very healthy spot. Prior to the rework, 4.6 Trickster was considered by the casuals a B, even A tier killer, I was saying.
So, couple things on that. The, what's it called? 4.6 Trickster, it just felt, what's the word? It almost felt like super old Legion, where he would hit you with a knife, run up to you, hit you with a knife, run up to you, hit you, and like, you know, it just kind of felt like that, where it's like death by 1,000 cuts. So, like, people that weren't, what's the word? People that weren't, like, accurate with blades and, like, that kind of stuff, and would just, like, run you down, or, like, use the speed to, like, zone you, like, you know, that's where it got more annoying. But as far as Trickster goes, like, I said you either love him or hate him. Like, my honest opinion on him is that I'm just kind of indifferent to him. Like, it really depends on the map, so it's really hard for me to judge him, because if there's things for him to, like, if he can throw over everything on the map, he feels very oppressive. If he can't throw over anything, he feels very useless. So it's really hard for me to, like, give my opinion to him. I do think the one thing that I don't like on him, period, is bouncing blades. Like, those just feel obnoxious to deal with. it feels like, what's it called? I can outplay him, be in an area where, like, what's the word? Where I should be safe, where he can't throw over anything, and instead he just ricochets it off a wall. And, like, a lot of the time that's blind, and it feels really shitty because I know that the trickster can't see me, and they're just, you know, hucking knives. And then when, like, you have, when you pair that with, like, main event, you just turn, like, any corridor into a blender. It's like, I just don't like that. So, that's just my 2 cents on Trickster. I don't really know, like, what's the word? In, like, a quote-unquote competitive capacity, I don't know enough about him to give my 2 cents.
And by the Trickster mains, he was considered a C-tier killer, very weak, and now it's all the way around. The character is more complex, more difficult to understand for the average Tony, and the character, in my opinion, is in a very, very solid B-tier spot in a middle ground, because he has some weaknesses, some advantages and disadvantages that both sides can rely on, and pretty much just creates and defines him as being a B-tier killer. Yeah, at the end,
I don't
feel
think
like
he's
it was a
horrendously
success
complex,
because it brought the thing that the Trickster mains fall in love with this character with, is the power to be effective. It was a success at the end.
Yunjin's perks were massively overtuned, with one occurring complete counter to so many perks and essentially being a way better distortion, and the other becoming the strongest perk in the game as the game's most game-breaking
Fast track
general
is
perk. The map
still
was also a
stupid.
huge letdown. While visually one of the game's most beautiful maps, the gameplay loop was dreadful. Fixed RNG, a guarantee of 20 plus pallets, and it was one of the biggest maps in the game, and the community were once again upset and wanted to see change ahead of the chapter's main release. The chapter also saw additions to Trickster's voice lines, but none were added to Yunjin, and the chapter's original songwriter was all but forgotten in this update. However, one fantastic and notable feature in this patch was the customizable Aura
Love
Color
this.
edition,
This is one of
which
my
helped
favorite changes they've
significantly
ever
for
added.
accessibility purposes.
Which, by the way, I'm not going to say who they are in case they would like to remain nameless, but I do have a friend, or actually 2 friends, that one of them is very heavily colorblind, one of them is lightly colorblind, and I showed them the old system that DBD had, and, you know, I sent them pictures, and I asked them, like, you know, do any of these help you see anything? And their responses to all of them were, no, I can't tell the difference. So... And for the record, that was both of them. That was both the lightly colorblind friend and the heavily colorblind friend. Like, basically, they couldn't really tell that big of a difference in any of it. So...
The release was semi-well received.
So
Trickster
the aura
was buffed
changes are
slightly, and a new set
massive.
of prestige rewards gave veteran players something to aim for. However, the map and the perks were released as they were on the PTB, much to everybody's dismay. Concerns were also raised about prestige rewards, as not all of them featured new artwork, but rather featured chapter art, bringing into question
This is
Behavior's
somewhat
relationship
interesting.
with many license holders, most notably Resident Evil, who were otherwise considered by the community to be on good terms with Behavior. The Blood Moon event returned updated with perks now affecting blood gens unlike the year prior. While this did lead to a lot of annoying metas arising, despite the event
I
only lasting
hated
3
this
weeks,
game.
the
This game
community
mode.
still loved the event, and we
I did
also
not.
saw the fastest ever community effort to reach a goal and unlock the maximum blood point bonus. This left the game in a bit of a funny state, with the realm prevention system still in full effect, making
Girly
the map
pop
feel
pink
very
scratch
boring.
marks, hell
Fast track
yeah.
surged in popularity and being prevalent in almost every game, and this left the developers one final patch to finish off the year. The final patch of the year 9.6 had its content announced on April 6th. The update promised some exciting features, but it also had lots of major concerns surrounding it. Changes to 10 killers were teased, which led to great speculation and a lot of fear-mongering on Twitter as to what these changes may be. However, we also saw some features promised as far back as in August, notably
At least you
CP
actually
perks in
can
the
now,
lobby,
right?
which were finally coming to the PTB. The developers also teased diminishing returns, and this split the community down the middle. Back a year previously, the developers had already tried to remove haste stacking by making the highest strength haste perk take priority, and this had already been widely disliked. So bringing in diminishing returns would not only create a more linear meta towards boring builds, but it would also kill a lot of DBD content and strategies.
I think it got rid of kind of the main fun point of DBD, really.
Yeah.
I think for both sides, like even when I think of it now, quite fond memories on stream of running into Juglet, like just happened to queue into Juglet before, like me and him were actually like friends, and he was using a speed build on Hag, like playing Chag. I remember that being so. I still remember it was on Macmillan, and I remember it being such a funny game. Same when I played against like loads of speed clowns. I played against Juglet's Chag again. Some of the best games I've had. Like I died in all of those games.
Yeah,
I lost all of those games, but I remember them so well because it was just such a nice break from Pain Res Pop DMS. Now there's no reason to run fun builds anymore because what's the point? There's still a lot of perks that aren't affected by stacking. For example, like Dramaturgy Vigil, some of the videos I'm doing, like the key window text and distortion with the blood amber.
Yeah.
Like there's still a lot of ideas, and obviously when new perks come out, yeah,
it also doesn't gut the problematic builds. Your Pain Res Pops unaffected.
Yeah, that's the thing.
DHDS.
I'm gonna probably sound like some crazy titled Survivor main, but like so many fun builds on Survivor and Killer get gutted, but then they leave Pain Res Pop DMS the same build. I stream the game, but I still stream the game a fair bit. I see Pain Res Pop DMS like it feels like every game. It generally feels if it's not every game, it's every other game. Now we're seeing it more.
Yeah,
because there's no point.
It's
in
very
running
like
fun
recycled.
builds, most of them have been gutted now, so what's the point?
Stupid.
I don't blame the killers. Like, there's no point in running a fun build because you can't. Because when you could stack healing and it was like you do a heal in like 2-3 seconds, people were like, oh, it's broken. But you got to remember, like that survivor is dedicating their whole build to healing. So they don't have any gen rush perks. They've got no chase perks. They've got nothing else to help them. It's
there
just
you go,
all
Wizardly. There's your shadow.
to healing. It may seem broken on the surface, but when you really think about it, these stacking builds were not that crazy because you're putting all of your eggs into
validation.
One I don't even know if they should remove it. I think they've done it now. It's kind of what's done is done. I wouldn't mind seeing them just going over quite a few perks and reworking them, if that makes sense. Because there's a lot of perks now that are quite useless. So I wouldn't mind if they just went back over a bunch of those perks like Team Up Para 2 and just either completely rework them or even just buff them. Make us a Team Up Para 2. Was it 5% on its own?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll make it 7 or 8 because you can't stack it anymore. So maybe actually make it worth running.
After a lot of discourse around all of these features, the PTB notes finally dropped to much disappointment, as after 6 weeks...
Just to give my official opinion on the stacking change, I don't like it. If I had the option of having it or not, and those are my only two choices, I would rather not. Like, there are some things that are quite annoying with it, but at the end of the day, I would rather not have it. You know, there weren't... The only thing that I think is problematic stacking is gen speed. I think that is it. Yeah, exactly, Wizardly. I think the only thing problematic stacking is gen speed, because, being able to crank out a 40-second gen or whatever, whatever you can do with a full gen build, it's not right. The other thing is, being able to pull generators that fast also get generators done that quickly. It also helps disguise cheaters, because, if you get a gen done in, let's say hypothetically there's a cheater in your game, right? And they bring a full gen build, but they're also cheating on the side. This sounds like a really specific situation, but it, who knows how often it happens. But the thing is, they can make it look like the 20-second generator was just them using their brand new part. Or them doubling a generator. You have no way of knowing unless you bring, Discordance or something. So, and even then, you don't know if they're hitting, great skill checks. You don't know if they're, if they have, you don't know, how fast their gen goes. You can sit there and do calculations, but there's still variables. For example, let's say oh, I rolled a 20 on I'm forgetting Loot Perk's actual name. Bardic Inspiration. Oh, I rolled a 20 on Bardic Inspiration. Disprove it. So yeah, that's kind of my point with it. Is that with all the gen perks out now, it is harder to find cheaters, and the gen stacking makes it even harder to find them. So it's yeah, there are some things that also feed into that, with, you know, like some haste builds also you can make it kind of look like people are cheating. But like gen perks I think are the worst instances of that, and also the most impactful. If someone looks like they're running like slightly faster, I think I would rather that than have people do like a 20-second generator.
Wait, between PTBs, pretty much all of these killer changes were completely
But yeah, I don't like the
diminishing
stacking
returns
change.
threatened DBD content as a whole, and Fast Track's change still didn't address the perk's core issues. However, the Blight
Luke,
move sounded
for-
very promising, and upon testing the PTB, at least some of the killer changes had a little bit of impact on the matches. DBD also teased Bloodbound, which the
okay,
community
yeah.
speculated may be an event, a chapter, or something more exciting, but it led to only cosmetics, a rift, and another iteration of 2v8. And finally, the 9.6 release saw pretty much everything in the PTB
At least that iteration of 2v8 knocked Legion out, which I think was pretty unanimously agreed in the community to be a good thing. And I do like that nurse skin, so
alive, and for the final update of the year, this really was incredibly underwhelming and damaged DBD content as a whole. I think, in conclusion, and to share my thoughts, there was a lot of letdowns in Year 9 of Dead by Daylight. I'm personally hoping Behaviour simply takes more care in what they're putting in patches and uses the PTBs more carefully to make sure the content releases in a stable and safe state.
I can
I think
firmly
the killer
agree with
changes
that,
last
yeah.
patch were very boring. However, if they were a thing every single patch, it would definitely keep the game fresh, keep the game interesting, and it would lower the distance between those S tiers being way too strong and the D tiers being way too weak. I think the
So, on that one, I do like the idea of them lowering that gap. I mean, that should be pretty self-explanatory, but like the fact that they had to nerf Awakened Awareness because it was too strong on Nurse, specifically Nurse, and everyone knew they were talking about Nurse, like I wholeheartedly agree with the fact that they need to lower that gap. And yeah, that's going to be done over several patches. You're not going to have like one massive patch that like immediately pulls everything into order. And like even after that, you're still going to see like, you know, like metas emerge, and you're still going to see like certain killers be better than others, whether it's because they're easier to use or like their skill ceiling is like slightly better or whatever the case may be. Like, you know, regardless of if you manage to balance the game perfectly or not, and I put perfectly in air quotes, like, you're still going to see, like, one killer more than the others, but it'd be better than it is now. And I do think that that's going to be done over several patches, not just, you know, one or two.
10th anniversary needs to be something special, and that's something I wrote in these notes when I scripted it a couple of weeks ago, and seeing all the teasers surrounding the game, I honestly have a lot of hope for it. I'm recording this on Friday 22nd, and I think by the time this video goes out, we'll know what the chapter is. Hopefully my speculation
We do know
and
what the
hopes
chapter
were
is.
on point with that one. However, I'd like to thank you for sticking out with me and my friends who I interviewed for this video. I encourage you to share your thoughts and opinions in the comments. If you are a creator or want to send this to a creator to react and add value to, please be my guest to use this video and share your thoughts on a stream or in a video. That's completely okay with me. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you next week for another video.
So there you guys go. That is why I wanted to react to that video, because not only did I think the content of it was good, but also they gave expressed permission to to use it in the to use it. But yeah, by and large, like, I think that just about everything he said in there was valid complaints. Maybe there were a couple of things here and there that were a little bit of like nitpicking, but you know, I understand where it comes from. The other thing is like you mentioned using the PTBs more responsibly and like making sure that everything comes out in order. DBD is really notoriously shitty for that. And that's why a lot of people treat the PTB as like almost a live patch where like nothing changes. Because it kind of is. Like there's rare situations where like they'll take the community's advice and actually like surgically do things, but usually it's like all or nothing. Like, you know, like you said with the with like the couple iterations of the slugging patch change. You know, like a lot of like for the first one, like none of that was implemented. So yeah, it's very rare that they actually take the full what's the word? The full value that the community's like surveys give them, and like that they hear outcries from the community and actually do something. Also, like he said with the streetwise change, like that took massive community outcry in order to get it fixed, as opposed to it being like fixed, shipped as is. Like that is a massive bug to make it to live. That is a disgusting bug to make it to live, and yet it did. Excuse me. So that is going to be the end of the video and the end of stream. But just in case you guys have someone else that you want to see react to this, I will go ahead and pardon me. Can I get this out of here? I hate this stupid thing. There we go. So just once again, in case you guys want to like either rewatch the video or send it to a content creator, you know, of your choosing, that is the video.